Knightly Musers, followers of the pod, faithful few and hopeful many, this is Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about it, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's the very platform that allows me to give you what I give you on the nightly. So let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And it gives you the ability to distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally FREE free. So here's where you come in. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That is ANCHOR.fm to get started. Thank you very much. Peace. Welcome to the Knightly Muse podcast. This is your host, Tinayeshe. And if you could tell, my voice is kind of coming back, which is exciting. I'm still in quarantine, in better spirits, but we're going to get deep tonight. Shout out Low Fly. So I wrote this song. I think it's called Waiting or As I Pray. One of those is the title with the other one in parentheses. I'm not really great with titles, but anyway. It goes, I'm stuck in this room, waiting, stuck in this mess I made, waiting for you to come, save me. I'm waiting for you to come and save me. I'm stuck in this room waiting. Temptation has had its way. I'm barely standing. I cannot make it on my own. Cannot do this on my own. So give me your bread, oh Father. Give me your bread each day. Strengthen my mind, unravel my eyes. Remind me this night that you are kneeling right beside me as I pray. Ooh, Lord. But one of the other ones, it's, give me your bread, oh Father. Give me your bread. You say it's daily, but can it last me through the night? And that's actually what follows the first verse of that song. And yeah, I don't know why I sang it. I sang it because I always sing on here, but following about with COVID has beaten the crap out of my voice. So I'm out here sounding like Carl Lewis doing the national anthem. Yo, I saw a video of that today, and it is the funniest thing. Because it's very clear from the video that he can actually sing, but he just picked the wrong key, I guess. So maybe he was just nervous. But he went, and the Rockets, red glare. Oh, now. He said, oh, now. Y'all, you gotta watch Carl Lewis doing the national anthem. You will get a good laugh, or you'll cringe, or you'll feel bad, or you'll feel a little bit of everything, but it is so worth it. Anyway, I am in quarantine. I've been in my room for the most part since Tuesday night and have not gotten out of it since then, for the most part. And I'm not saying any of this to glamorize like struggle or sin. But I think one, as a guy, and two, as a Christian, we don't, we like abstractify things. I don't even know if that's a word, but like we always will talk about sin as like a concept or like a very abstract, far off thing. And I don't know if there's any room for talking about like actual sins in my life when they're actually happening. Partly because I don't know if people are ready to receive that. And it's scary. It's a lot easier to talk about pornography when I'm talking about it from this is the struggle of my like life. Whether like it's easier to talk about it in that regard than it is to say, hey, like I watched porn last night. I didn't, but like it's easier to talk about it that way. And so, yeah, I don't know, that there's a element of vulnerability that is interesting within the context of Christianity, because like we can, we look at David's life, and I don't know if I've mentioned this here, but like David is supposed to be off at war with his soldiers, with his army, and he's not. He's at home. He's on his rooftop surveying his land, taking in the glory of what God has given him, but still neglecting his duty. And he sees this hot chick on the roof named Bathsheba taking a bath. And he's like, I want that, even though that's his friend's wife who's out fighting in battle right now. And he takes her in, has sex with her, impregnates her. Once he realizes what he's done in terms of impregnating her, he tries to get his homeboy to come from war. He does, to get him drunk so he could sleep with his wife, and he won't do it. Even in an inebriated state, won't do that while he's got men risking their lives. And he's so loyal that David's just kind of like, all right, well, I tried 2 things and it didn't work, so I guess I gotta kill him. And we see all of this. We see the process of Nathan calling him out. We see the aftermath, and like David's heart, Psalm 51, right? His repentance. And it's amazing. But we literally get to see sin documented in the Bible. Like pretty spelled out. And I wouldn't even say his is the worst sin that we see documented in scripture from Bible characters, and it's pretty bad. Adultery, I mean, it's not roofing somebody, but you're getting somebody drunk, so it's debauchery. There's lying, manipulation, murder. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. And I mean, you could argue, I mean, who can, at that point, she's married, but even if she didn't want to, right? Like, he took advantage of her. Like, in today's society, I think that would be considered some sort of, like, non-consensual, or at least she couldn't deny it even if she wanted to. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack with that story, but the point being, like, I don't know. I feel like I went on a tangent, and the point of what I was trying to say was I'm not trying to glamorize my sin, but I do want to be real about where I'm at right now, because maybe if you've got a kid who's struggled with the things that I struggle with, or if you struggle with them, then maybe there's wisdom and truth for you here. And so I'm so terrified to talk about the things that I'm about to talk about. But I've been in my room basically for the past, math is hard. Wednesday, Thursday. 24 times 4 is like, what is that? 96 hours. Is that right? 8 times 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. Yeah, 96 hours. And this is a Molotov cocktail of like me at my most tempted. And it sucks. When I've struggled with pornography and masturbation and just lust, fall into my own devices, it was pretty much always at night. And if it wasn't at night, it was during the day when I had nothing to do. And like idle hands. Like I struggle heavily there. Loneliness is a feeling that gets me there often, and I'm alone in quarantine. I'm bored as ever in this room, and idle time is literally constant. And I started to like learn as I was like looking at my life with this struggle, there was one moment I remember I said I thank God that God doesn't give me the answers to some of my retroactive questions, because I think I would lose my mind, go crazy, or with like guilt. Because I said, like, I wonder if I would have had a better football career if I didn't struggle with porn so bad. I mean, there were nights where I was up until like 5 a.m. and I had to get up at 7:30. And it was like I was a functioning alcoholic, basically, where I could go through the day and do what I needed to do, and I still got good grades. But like, how much of a better student would I have been? How much of a better athlete would I have been? How much of a better whatever? And luckily, I think God doesn't allow me to dwell in that enough, or as much as I probably could. Because I think I would go crazy, but it does influence like how I live now, because I can see the effects of my struggles as I'm older. But anyway, again, when I was looking back at my life, I looked at, like, if you know me, you may call me a busy person in terms of like I have a full plate. I do a lot of things. And I think one time I had said to somebody, I think I do a lot because I'm terrified to be at home by myself. Because I don't know what I'll do with the free time. I don't want to sin. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to fall to the things that have had a hold over me for a really long time. And it's scary. I mean, I think it's easier for me to be out and about all day, get home at 11 o'clock and just fall into the bed than it is to have a normal regimented day where I have like some built-in rest time, because I'm like, am I going to rest, or am I going to go do something I shouldn't? And that's just real. Like, I'm not if this is too much for you, then this might not be the episode for you to listen to. But I'm here, I'm at home, and I don't have an out. The way of escape is not like, I mean, there are things I can do to make it easier, but I try to, some of my boundaries that I put for myself because I need them, is I turn off my phone and I leave it out of my room when it's time to go to sleep. But a lot of traffic in and out of my room isn't necessarily good right now because of the whole COVID thing. And they're just different obstacles that I have to consider in terms of things that aren't necessarily an inconvenience to me, but things that make it easier for me to walk the straight and narrow path that I'm trying to walk. And when you can't sleep because you've been sleeping all day, and it's time to sleep, and you're restless, and your mind is trailing into places it probably shouldn't go to, like, what do you do? And so for, I guess, a couple of these days, in the past 96 hours, I've struggled a lot. And it's, like I said, it's like a Molotov cocktail of every scenario that makes me most vulnerable to the darker parts of me. And I hate it. And I felt like I can't say helpless, but I felt like it was just a losing battle for a couple days. And to be honest, I don't even feel like the point of this episode is to dwell on that, as it is to just talk through like my mentality. One of the hardest things that I found in this time in quarantine is I mean, realistically speaking, functionally speaking, I am alone right now. My roommates live here, but I can't really interact with them. And I'm in my room. And I've had some FaceTime with people, mainly my mom, that's brought me some things, and it's been a blessing. And some phone calls here and there, texts. But it reminded me of like lockdown. Like I got exposed a lot. I think my job as a church person makes that a little more possible than other jobs. But I got exposed a couple times before I ever got it. I didn't get COVID for, I think it was, the first time I got it had almost been 2 years since lockdown started when I got COVID for the first time. And before that, it was just, exposure and quarantine, and you're still fighting the same things, but at least you don't have it. And so that was, I think, the first go around with it was when I read the first Narnia book. And that blessed me. But I was still struggling. I was still kind of in the throes of all of that. And so here I am, kind of around whatever it is in terms of having a lockdown, and functionally, physically speaking, I feel alone, but then I have to remember truths that are spiritually, physically, theologically true of me not being alone, that God is with me. But it's hard to actually live that out or live in that truth, because in this case, the actuality of that truth comes with me actually spending time with him. Like, these 96 hours are 96 hours of opportunities that I squandered in terms of spending time with Jesus. Talk about lessons learned from Leviticus. I haven't learned any in the past 96 hours because I haven't spent time with him. I've binge watched shows. I've taken in content that I wanted to take in, and I struggled with masturbation and lust and things that I didn't need to be giving myself ground for, but I did, and I failed a lot. But the one thing I didn't do was open my Bible and read it. I got 96 hours of opportunities to spend quiet time with God, and I didn't do it. I scrolled Instagram. I texted friends. I called friends. I played games on my phone. I did countless things. But the one thing I didn't do was actually, like, the point is, like, God to me is no closer or further away from me. He's always been as close as he'll ever be to me. But I'm the one who distances myself from him, even though, like, he's the only person I could hang out with right now. And it's hard. I'm not here to give necessarily a word of wisdom about that, outside of saying, like, hey, if you're there, like, I was supposed to be at a wedding right now. I probably would be in the Airbnb right now after the wedding, and I think part of it was, this isn't what I wanted. This was an interruption to my life. This was an inconvenience to my life and my schedule and my plans, and I was pissed. And in all of that, the loneliness, the wrestling, I was vulnerable and I messed up and I failed. And so here's to acknowledging failure, because sometimes I feel like in Christianity we just talk about, like, the valleys as a concept, the trials and the tribulations as a concept, and we don't really personalize it at all. And that's just not what I'm here for. This isn't what this podcast is for. So yeah, I messed up. And I'm going to spend time with Jesus today because I need to. But I also want to give, like, verbiage for some of the struggles that I think I have mentally. Like, loneliness is it's a unique type of beast, because the physical loneliness I'm feeling, and then some of the doubts that I have, or the questions or fears that I have, like, I know I'm only 23 years old, and we kind of talked about this in the Hopelessly Hopeful episode. I don't remember what number that was, because I've done a lot of these now in a short amount of time. But I want to get married one day, and I've wanted that for as long as I can remember. And I think each day, each season, each time that passes, where each rejected offer to a date, or messed up, or, like, I don't know, plan that doesn't go my way as it pertains to romance. Like, each time that happens, I have the opportunity in my head to decide, like, to believe the truth or a lie, or like hope, or I guess, what's the opposite of hope? Hopelessness. We'll just say that. With the rejection from a female, it's okay, she's not the one, and that yes is gonna come one day. Or, man, I don't know if that yes is ever gonna come. And yes, I think it's helpful sometimes to get the advice from a friend. Hey, you're so young. It's not helpful sometimes to hear that, because in their mind, it's like, oh, you've only been like processing relationships since you were like, I don't know, 15. No, like I've wanted this since I was like 5. So I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's not like people process these things differently. And so, yeah, I'm young, but it feels like I've wanted this for 2 decades. And it's hard. And so sometimes the loneliness is looking around and seeing all of your peers getting what you want. And you looking at God and singing Jireh and saying, if he dresses the lilies with beauty and splendor, and if he watches over every sparrow, how much more will he clothe you, and how much more does he love you? Like, yes, the point of Jireh is to say that he is enough, but it's also to have faith that he is the God that will provide. And it's like, well, God, I've been waiting. And so sometimes the last person that you want to spend time with is the person that you feel like is holding out on you. Even when you know, theologically speaking, that isn't true. It doesn't always feel like it's true. And so the loneliness kind of has a multi-layered effect. The loneliness of my current situation, being stuck in my room, and the loneliness of wanting that other person in your life that you've imagined is going to be amazing in the relationship, the hard stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. The playing at the weddings, the hoping for that same feeling, the excitement that you have for your friend, and the anticipation that gives you for your own moment. Like, all of that is real. And to go from that to now I'm just alone, stuck to all of my worst thoughts. Here I am, loneliness, idle hands. If I fill up my time with things, I don't have to think about those things. Idle minds, idle hands allows me to go to those places that I don't allow myself to go. It's harder to think about those things when I'm serving. It's harder to think about those things when I'm coaching. It's harder to think about those things when I'm immersed in something, whether it's things that I enjoy or just like work. And so, idle hands, I'm bored. And man, sometimes it's hard to avoid. Like, there's a show that I was watching. It's called The Boys. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of a darker, like, superhero, anti-hero, comic, live action thing. But it's like, man, like, how hard is it sometimes to take in, like, content, media, and not have people with their shirts off. Things that are inappropriate, that are triggers, that get your mind going places they shouldn't go when you're there for the content, when you're there for the plot, and the plot has to include things that the plot would be unchanged if it was or wasn't there. And it becomes hard. And so there's just an amount of discipline and staying away from and filling up things with certain things to distract yourself. Like, there's just a lot of effort and energy that it takes at a time where I have virtually none. And so that's where I was. And I don't know if you connect with any of that, men, women, whoever. Like, that's where I was. And that's where I find myself when I'm my most vulnerable. It's usually not all of those things at once, but it's usually one or the other. And my encouragement that I've used for other people, that one day I can't say one day. I hope that it actually was used for me. I texted a friend and said it was a good day, and he said, all right, well, let's make sure it's a good night too. And he said, remember your name. And I wouldn't phrase it that way, but I knew what he meant. And when I encourage my brothers, what I say over them isn't, you're better than this, even though I can say that. It's, you are God's child and he loves you. You are free. So live in that freedom. It's on my rock, the rock that's on my nightstand. It's, you are my son and I love you. And so I have to remember in those moments where I feel like I'm alone, no, Kennedy, you're not alone. Tinayeshe, you are not alone. Your name, your very name, remember your name. We are with God. Tinayeshe, we are with him. God. God is with you. Your name literally is Emmanuel in the inverse. God is with you. And sometimes the actualization of that truth is you got to spend time with him. And so I encourage my friends to, the hardest thing with this is like, we believe like the scripture, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Like, we believe that the work that Jesus did on the cross is sufficient for the moments where I struggle, that I don't have to view myself as somebody who is tethered to the shackles of pornography and lust and masturbation. No, he's already made me free, and I have to learn to walk in that freedom. And part of that learning is that I struggle sometimes. But the other side of that is that I have to learn to walk as somebody who has been set free and not as somebody who is in chains. It's like, I think, what is it, Pavlov's dog or something, where if a dog tries to, what is it? There's some, it's in psychology, basically, if there's a boundary and you train a dog that every time it tries to get over the boundary, like it gets shocked or something, even when the shock isn't there, or even when the boundary isn't necessarily there and they can easily get over it, they won't. Like, they just become hopeless and they give up. And I just butchered that analogy, but it's real. Like, but if you set a dog like loose, when you unleash a dog like goes crazy. It runs around, it gets the zoomies, it's amazing. But if you attach like a mentality of like, this, the concept of like the emancipation of the mind, like you have to believe that you've been set free. You have to believe that you're free. And if that dog doesn't believe that it's free, even if you take the leash off, like it won't run around with fearlessness. It'll be bashful. It'll act like it's still on a leash. And I wish I was fresh out of my psychology class so that I could explain that a little better, because I thought that concept was so incredible. But even now, some of the things that I'm learning, like, I've got to learn how to live as somebody who has been set free. And some of that means that there are going to be days where I feel physically alone. And I have to remind myself that I'm not. My friend Charlie, he wrote me a song. I was going through a really hard time, some drama with friends, and hearing about people talking behind my back, and it really hurt me, on top of other things that were going wrong in my life. And he sent me this song. And I promise you that you are not alone. And I remember he was playing the piano and he's singing these words. And then he said my name. And I just cried in my car. Because as I was listening to the song, it was like he was singing it. Like it was as if, like he was singing it to me. It wasn't like a song where like he's singing it to me. I can promise you that you are not alone. You are mine, you are mine. He had this beautiful like riff, and his voice was gorgeous, but it was as God singing that over me. And sometimes I gotta sing that over myself. For a stretch, I played that every night. And I wish I was doing that tonight. I wish I was doing that over these past 96 hours. But now I've learned and I can move forward. And I guess this podcast, this episode was to remind for my people in the fight, for all my people in the struggle, Kirk Franklin, to all my people in this struggle, whether it's sexual sin, pornography, masturbation, lust, or other sins that also fight your insecurities, like, you are not alone. You are his and he is yours. And sometimes you have to speak that truth to yourself when you're alone, physically, in the ways that you can tangibly feel it. Sometimes you will be there and it will feel that way. And you gotta speak truth to yourself, because if you don't, you might fall. But the beauty of this life is that when you fall, you can get back up. The beauty of this life is that when you fall, God is there to catch you. And there are people that can text you and tell you to remember your name. Tinayeshe, we are with God, and he is with you. So this ended up being a lot longer than I planned, but hey, I'm long-winded. That's not new. Thank you for listening to this, and if this is an encouragement to anyone, let me know. Email me. I'll gladly hit you up. It's the Knightly Muse pod at gmail.com. Shout out Lo Fly.